Have you ever loved in silence someone who seemed unattainable? Imagine being torn from your own wedding by the man who never had the courage to confess his feelings to you. In San Miguel de Allende, Marisol is about to marry Andrés, not knowing that he only loves her for her inheritance. Sebastián, his millionaire boss, keeps a devastating secret that could destroy everything. What happens on the altar will change their lives forever. Stay until the end to discover how true love can come, just when everything seems lost. The mansion of San Miguel de Allende woke up with the singing of the birds every morning. But for Sebastián, 37 years old, the true awakening came when he listened to Marisol's soft steps through the corridors. For 5 years, each day began the same. He pretended to check documents in his office while she prepared breakfast in the kitchen, and his heart beat with a force that embarrassed him. Marisol was 29 years old, with honey-colored eyes that shone with an authentic sweetness, and a smile that transformed the darkest corners of that huge house. Sebastián had learned to love in silence, to keep every gesture, every kind word, every laughter shared as little treasures that no one else could see. He knew he was a coward, that he should have spoken a long time ago, but the fear of losing her as an employee, as a constant presence in his life, paralyzed him. In addition, there was that invisible gap between them. He was the boss, the owner of that colonial property that his family had kept for generations, and she was the daughter of the woman who had been his most beloved maid. The social difference weighed like a slab on his shoulders, although for Sebastián that had never really mattered. What mattered was that Marisol deserved someone brave, someone capable of declaring his love to her without fear, and that someone, he thought bitterly every night, was not him. However, what Sebastián did not know was that Marisol also kept a secret in her chest. When she cleaned the library and he passed by, her pulse accelerated in a way that scared her and excited her at the same time. There was something about the way Sebastián treated her, with genuine respect and an almost imperceptible tenderness, that made her feel seen as never before. But Marisol had learned from an early age that the dreams of a domestic employee did not include romances with millionaires. Her mother had repeated it many times before she died. Life was hard for people like them, and it was better to keep your feet on the ground. So Marisol also kept quiet. She also kept her feelings under control, and she was satisfied with those fleeting moments when their eyes met by accident. Both lived in a silent dance of unrequited love, without knowing that the other felt exactly the same. That September afternoon, Marisol was in the backyard watering the bougainvilleas that she liked so much when she heard a familiar voice that she had not heard for years. "Marisol, is that you?" The young woman turned around and almost dropped the watering can. In front of her was Andrés, 35 years old, with a wide smile and open arms. They had grown up in the same neighborhood, shared 15th birthday parties and Holy Week processions, although they had never been close. Andrés had always been kind but distant, one more of the multitude of acquaintances who populated her childhood. "Andrés, what are you doing here?" Marisol asked, surprised but genuinely happy to see a face from the past. He approached with confidence, dressed impeccably, as if the years had polished and refined him. "I came to visit Don Sebastián's family. I have some paperwork to sign. I work there now, can you imagine? I, who was never good with letters, now handle documents all day." He laughed naturally, and Marisol could not help but smile too. They talked for a few minutes about the neighborhood, about friends in common who had gotten married or moved to other states. It was a light chat, without pretensions, but something about the way Andrés looked at her was different. There was a new intensity, an interest that she did not remember before. When she finally said goodbye, promising to return soon, Marisol felt a small spark of curiosity. Perhaps life was giving her an opportunity where she least expected it. Perhaps someone was finally seeing her for real. From the window of his office on the second floor, Sebastián observed the whole scene. He saw how Marisol laughed with that man, how her cheeks blushed slightly, how her hands played nervously with the edge of her apron. He felt a sharp stab in the chest, as if someone had stuck something sharp between his ribs. He had no right to feel jealous. He repeated this mentally as he clenched his fists. He had had years to speak, years to be brave, and he had wasted them all out of fear. Now a stranger appeared out of nowhere, and in 5 minutes he had achieved what Sebastián had not achieved in 5 years, to make her smile with that authentic, spontaneous joy. Sebastián closed his eyes and tried to take a deep breath, but the air seemed to be scarce in that room, suddenly too small. He remembered the words of his best friend just 2 months ago. If you don't tell her how you feel, one day someone else will, and you will regret it for the rest of your life. He had ignored the advice, convinced that he was doing the right thing by keeping his distance. Now those words resonated in his head, like a prophecy being fulfilled before his eyes. He went down the stairs with heavy steps and pretended to be natural when Andrés entered the house with the documents from the registry office. He signed everything mechanically, without really reading anything, just wanting that man to leave his property as soon as possible. But when Andrés said goodbye, "See you soon, Mr. Sebastián. We will surely meet again here," he knew that something terrible had just begun. The following weeks were a silent torture for Sebastián. Andrés began to appear with a suspicious frequency, always with some excuse related to work. A document that needed to be signed, a consultation on a property process, a verification of some old papers. But Sebastián noticed the truth in every visit. Andrés was looking for any excuse to stay a few more minutes in the garden, talking to Marisol. And she, innocent and kind as always, received each visit with an increasingly broad smile. One afternoon, Sebastián saw them sitting together on the bench under the jacaranda tree, sharing basket tacos that Andrés had brought. Marisol laughed freely, with that crystalline laugh that Sebastián adored and that now broke his soul. From his window, he observed how Andrés told her stories, gesticulating exaggeratedly, and how she covered her mouth so as not to spit out her food from so much laughter. It was a simple, everyday, beautiful scene, and Sebastián hated it with every fiber of his being. He did not hate Marisol, of course. He never could. Nor did he really hate Andrés, whom he barely knew. What he hated was his own cowardice, his pathetic inability to cross the garden, to sit next to her and say 3 simple words to her. "I love you, Marisol." 3 words that were stuck in his throat every damn day. That night, when Marisol had already gone to her house in the neighborhood and the mansion was silent, Sebastián poured himself a tequila and stared at the stars from the terrace. He felt old, tired, defeated by a battle that he never had the courage to fight. 3 more weeks passed, and the relationship between Marisol and Andrés became evident to everyone in the house. He began to pick her up after work, waiting for her in his truck outside the mansion with religious punctuality. Marisol left smiling, fixing her hair before getting into the vehicle, and Sebastián observed from a window how they moved together towards the center of San Miguel de Allende. One night, Mrs. Guadalupe, the housekeeper who had been working in the house for 30 years, approached Sebastián in the kitchen. "Child, forgive me for meddling where I am not called, but you are suffering and it is noticeable on your face." She said it with that frankness that only years of trust allow. Sebastián tried to deny it, but she raised a hand to silence him. "I saw how you looked at Marisol since she was 24 and came here after her mother died. 5 years have passed, 5 silent years, and now this boy comes, and in a month he has her eating out of his hand." Mrs. Guadalupe's words were like slaps of reality. "If you love her, tell her now. If not, let her be happy and do not make her carry your sadness." Sebastián fell silent, unable to form words, but that same night, lying in his bed, looking at the ceiling, he remembered something that changed everything. He remembered Marisol's mother, Mrs. Esperanza, who had worked in that mansion for 20 years until cancer took her 5 years ago. He remembered her deathbed, her weak hand clinging to his, her broken voice asking for one last favor. "Take care of my Marisol when I leave, Sebastián. Promise me that you will not leave her alone in this cruel world." Andrés walked through the corridors of the San Miguel de Allende registry office, with a folder under his arm and a satisfied smile on his lips. He had been working there for 2 years, archiving documents of properties, wills, and inheritances of the most important families in the region. It was a monotonous, repetitive job, but it gave him access to information that very few people knew. That afternoon in October, while he was organizing old files in the basement of the building, he found a file with the name Marisol Ramirez Sandoval written in faded letters. Curiosity led him to open it, hoping to find some simple identification process, or perhaps a record of a smaller property. What he discovered left him paralyzed for several seconds, rereading each word to make sure he was not misinterpreting. Marisol, the same Marisol he had known as a child in the neighborhood, the domestic employee who worked in the mansion of the Millionaires, was the heir to a considerable fortune. Her biological father, a Spanish businessman named Rafael Sandoval, had passed away 6 months ago in Madrid, leaving her an inheritance of several million pesos. The document specified that Marisol should appear at the Spanish embassy in Mexico City to claim her share, and that she had a 2-year term to do so. Andrés closed the file with trembling hands. His mind was working at full speed, calculating possibilities, evaluating risks. Marisol did not know any of this. It was obvious. If she had known, she would have already done the paperwork. Nobody rejects several million pesos. The question that now burned in his head was simple and terrible. What would he do with this information? Andrés was not an evil man by nature, but he was not a saint either. He had grown up in poverty, watching his mother work 12 hours a day, cleaning houses to support 4 children. He had known hunger, the humiliation of asking for a loan, the impotent rage of not being able to buy medicine for his younger sister when she got sick. He had promised himself that he would never be poor again, that he would do what was necessary to move forward. The job at the office gave him stability, but it was hardly enough to pay the rent of a modest apartment and help his mother. He dreamed of more, of having his own business, of traveling, of not having to count every peso before buying food. And now, fate presented him with a golden opportunity, wrapped in the form of a beautiful woman who did not even know she was a millionaire. For 3 days, Andrés fought with himself. He knew that what he was considering was morally questionable, scratching at the despicable, but he also knew that such opportunities did not appear twice in life. He thought of his mother, of his brothers, of all the times he had had to say, "I can't," when they wanted something. He thought about how it would be to have enough money to never worry again, and slowly, day by day, his conscience was losing the battle against his ambition. The plan was formed only in his mind. If he approached Marisol, if he conquered her, if he managed to marry her before she discovered the inheritance, he could make sure to be present when she claimed it. As a husband, he would have rights over those assets. It was perfect, almost too easy. The next time he had to bring documents to Sebastián's mansion, Andrés made sure to arrive just when he knew that Marisol would be in the garden. He had prepared himself mentally, rehearsed casual phrases, practiced his most charming smile in front of the mirror. When he saw her watering the plants, his plan began to be executed with calculated precision. He pretended to be genuinely surprised, acted the role of the old friend who happens to meet again, and it worked. Marisol received him warmly, without suspecting anything. In the following weeks, Andrés became a master of subtle manipulation. Each visit was carefully planned. He brought small details, a basket of tacos that were left over from lunch, wildflowers that he found on the way, a blessed rosary that was given to him in the parish, because he thought that she would like it. Nothing too ostentatious to raise suspicions, only humble and apparently disinterested gestures. He listened carefully when Marisol spoke of her life, of her modest dreams, of how she missed her mother. Andrés took a mental note of every detail, of every emotional weakness that could be exploited later. He discovered that Marisol felt alone, that she did not have many friends, that her life revolved around work in the mansion. Perfect. He could fill that void, become her world. When he made her laugh, Andrés felt a pinch of guilt that he quickly suffocated. "It's just business," he repeated. "She's going to be happy, and I'm going to have financial security. Everyone wins." What Andrés did not anticipate was that Marisol had something that disarmed him every time they were together. A genuine kindness that did not seem to come from this world. One day, when he pretended that his truck had broken down near the mansion, Marisol insisted that he stay for dinner. She prepared him green enchiladas with all her love, served him fresh Jamaica water, and sat down to listen to him talk about his family with an attention that made him feel important. While he was eating, Andrés observed her hands, worked from years of cleaning, her nails short and unpainted, her face free of makeup, but beautiful in its simplicity. Marisol had nothing in material terms, but her laughter was authentic. Her heart seemed unable to hold a grudge. For a moment, Andrés wondered if he could really go ahead with his plan. But then he remembered the bills to be paid, the electricity bill that had arrived with an impossible amount, his mother's call asking him for money for her medication. The guilt evaporated, replaced by a renewed determination. He began to stay longer after each visit, making up excuses to extend the conversations. He asked her about her tastes, her favorite songs, her favorite movies. Marisol, used to being invisible to most people, flourished under this sudden attention. Andrés knew he was playing with her emotions, but he justified himself thinking that in the end she would be rich, and he would barely be taking what was his due for doing the dirty work. After all, he reasoned, someone had to let her know about the inheritance eventually. He was just making sure he was in the right place when that happened. 2 months after the reunion, Andrés had already established himself as a constant presence in Marisol's life. He waited for her every afternoon outside the mansion. He took her for a walk through the stone streets of the historic center of San Miguel de Allende. They shared lemon slices in the main square while they watched the tourists. For any outside observer, they were a couple in the process of falling in love. And in a way, for Marisol, that was how it was. She began to believe that perhaps God was giving her a second chance to be happy, to have someone who would choose her. She never suspected that every smile of Andrés had been measured, that every sweet word had a calculated purpose. One night, while driving back to his apartment after leaving Marisol at her house, Andrés looked at himself in the rearview mirror. Almost, he said out loud, just a little more time and everything will be secured. He took out his phone and opened the calculator, crunching numbers about how much longer he needed before he could propose without it seeming hasty. 3 more months, he decided. In 3 months, Marisol would be emotionally involved enough not to question a proposal. And then, once married, he could casually discover the information of the inheritance and help her with all the procedures. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. While driving through the dark streets of San Miguel, Andrés sang a song. He didn't feel remorse. He only felt the thrill of a plan that was working out exactly as he had imagined. Sebastián woke up that morning with the same dream that had been chasing him for 5 years. Doña Esperanza, Marisol's mother, was sitting at the table in the back garden of the mansion, weaving a light blue blanket, as she used to do in her last months of life. In his dream, she looked at him with those tired eyes, but full of maternal love, and said, "My son, promise me that you will take care of my daughter. Don't let this harsh world hurt her." Sebastián always woke up at that point, with a knot in his throat and the weight of a promise that he didn't know how to keep. He got out of bed, walked barefoot to the window, and watched the sunrise painting the domes of the colonial churches of San Miguel de Allende orange. Doña Esperanza had been more than a maid to him. When his own mother died when he was just a 16-year-old teenager, it was Esperanza who comforted him, who prepared him hot chocolate on sad nights, who reminded him that life went on even if it hurt. For 20 years, she had been the heart of that huge mansion that sometimes felt too empty. And when cancer began to consume her 6 years ago, Sebastián moved heaven and earth to get the best doctors for her. Although in the end, no one could do anything. The last 3 months of Doña Esperanza's life were a calvary that she faced with admirable dignity. Sebastián set up a hospital bed in the room she occupied in the mansion, hired nurses 24 hours a day, and made sure that nothing was missing. But what worried Esperanza the most was not her own suffering, but the future of her daughter. Marisol was 24 years old when her mother began to die. She worked in a craft store in the center of San Miguel, earning barely enough to help with the medical expenses that the insurance did not cover. Sebastián saw her arrive every afternoon running from work, her face disheveled by worry, and she sat next to her mother's bed to tell her about her day, trying to keep her spirits up. Esperanza smiled weakly, caressed her daughter's hair, and when Marisol left the room to make her something to eat, she asked Sebastián to come closer. "She has no one else in this world, my son. Her biological father never wanted to meet her. My brothers live far away and hardly talk to us. When I leave, Marisol will be alone." Her voice broke when she said this, and Sebastián had to hold back his tears. "Don't worry, Doña Espe. I will take care of her, I swear." But Esperanza was not satisfied with vague promises. One night, 2 weeks before she died, she took him by the hand with surprising strength for someone so weak. "Sebastián, look at me. Give her work here in the house. Don't let her have any needs. Protect her from men who only want to take advantage of her. My Marisol has a very good heart. She believes in everyone. Promise me that you will not leave her alone in this cruel world. Promise me in front of God." Sebastián, with tears rolling down his cheeks, swore. "I promise you, Doña Espe. I will take care of her as if she were my own sister." She closed her eyes in relief, and 2 weeks later, she left in peace. Now 5 years later, Sebastián realized that he had only fulfilled half of that promise. He had given her work, paid her more than necessary, made sure that she did not lack anything material, but protecting her from the men who wanted to take advantage of her, that had become infinitely more complicated when he himself had fallen in love with Marisol. He remembered the exact moment it happened. It was 6 months after the death of Doña Esperanza. Marisol was in the garden planting sunflowers, her mother's favorite flowers, and the afternoon sun illuminated her face in an almost celestial way. She hummed a song that Esperanza used to sing, and at that moment, something broke inside Sebastián's chest. She was no longer the daughter of his employee. She was no longer the girl who needed fraternal protection. She was a beautiful, strong woman, capable of moving forward despite the pain, and he loved her. He knew it with a terrifying clarity. For months, he tried to convince himself that it was only love, only the fulfillment of a promise. But every time she entered a room, the air changed. Every time she laughed, his heart opened. It was love, pure and simple, and completely impossible, because confessing his feelings meant breaking the promise of taking care of her like a sister. It meant crossing a line that perhaps she did not want to cross. It meant risking being rejected and losing even her daily presence in the mansion. So Sebastián chose silence. He chose silent suffering. He chose to love from afar. But now, that silence was costing him everything. The days passed, and Sebastián observed impotently how Andrés seized every free moment of Marisol. He saw her waiting for him at the door with that smile too perfect, too practiced. Something about that man did not fit with him, although he could not explain exactly what it was. Perhaps it was jealousy disguised as intuition, he said to himself in moments of lucidity. But there was something else. Something in the way Andrés's eyes calculated each movement, as if he were playing a chess game where Marisol was the prize. One afternoon, after Andrés left with Marisol to the center, Sebastián went down to the garden and sat on the bench under the jacaranda tree where he had seen them so many times. He passed his hands over the worn wood, imagining the conversations they would have had there. Doña Espe, I do not know how to keep my promise, he whispered to the air. If I tell her that I love her, perhaps I will lose her. If I do not tell her anything, I will lose her anyway. What do I do? The wind moved the branches of the tree, and some purple flowers fell on his shoulders. Sebastián closed his eyes, and for a moment he could almost feel the presence of Esperanza. He could almost hear her voice telling him that true love requires courage, not silence. Doña Guadalupe left the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee and sat next to him without asking permission. Look, little Sebastián, I also made a promise to Esperanza before she died. I promised her that I would take care of you, that I would not let you do silly things. And letting Marisol go without fighting is the silliest thing I have seen in my 60 years of life. Sebastián took the cup with trembling hands. What if I am not enough for her, Doña Lupita? What if she rejects me? Doña Guadalupe took a long sip of her coffee before answering, savoring the piloncillo and the cinnamon, as if she needed that moment of sweetness before telling bitter truths. Little boy, you have been enough from the first day that Marisol set foot in this house. I have seen you looking at her when you do not realize. I have seen you get nervous when you enter the kitchen. That girl loves you too. Only you two are so stubborn that you prefer to suffer in silence rather than the taking risks. Sebastián looked up, hopeful but skeptical. Do you really believe that? The old woman nodded firmly. I know. A woman knows another woman. But now that so-and-so Andrés has arrived, and she is confused. He is brave. He declares himself to her with flowers and outings. You, on the other hand, barely say good morning. What do you expect the poor girl to do? Read your mind? Doña Guadalupe's words were like needles getting stuck in sensitive places. Besides, that Andrés does not give me a good feeling. He appeared out of nowhere after years, just when Marisol was vulnerable. That is not a coincidence, little boy. That is called opportunism. Sebastián frowned, his own suspicions echoing in the words of the old woman. I also feel that something is not right, but I have no proof. It's only rumors. Doña Guadalupe got up, leaving her cup empty on the bench. Well, get that proof. Do not let your promise to Esperanza be broken by doing nothing. She asked you to protect Marisol, and sometimes protecting means investigating, finding out, making sure that the people around her are trustworthy. Sebastián was left alone in the garden when Doña Guadalupe returned to the kitchen. The words echoed in his head. Maybe there was a way to keep his promise without confessing his feelings, a way to protect her without taking the risk of rejection. The private detective's office was on a discreet street in the center of San Miguel de Allende, above an old pharmacy that smelled of medicinal herbs and benzoin. Sebastián climbed the narrow stairs with his heart beating fast, still doubting if he was doing the right thing. It had taken him 3 days to make the final decision. 3 days of not sleeping well, of turning the idea over and over to exhaustion. He knocked on the wooden door, where he read Ricardo Mendoza, Private Investigations in half-erased golden letters. A 50-year-old man with a plump mustache and sharp eyes opened it with a professional smile. Don Sebastian, come in, please. I was waiting for you. They had spoken on the phone the day before, but Sebastian had been vague in the details, only mentioning that he needed to investigate someone. Now, sitting in front of the office full of folders and photographs, he felt ridiculous. Look, Don Ricardo, I don't know if this is right or if I'm going too far. The detective served 2 glasses of water from a clay jug. Calm down. First tell me what you need, and then we'll decide if I can help you or not. Everything you tell me here is in absolute confidence. Sebastian took a deep breath and began to speak. He told him about Marisol, about her mother's promise, about Andrés, and his suspicions. I don't know if I'm being paranoid or if there really is something strange. I just want to know if that man is trustworthy, if his intentions with Marisol are genuine. She deserves someone who truly loves her, not someone who wants to take advantage of her. Don Ricardo took notes in a small notebook, without judging, only listening with professional attention. When Sebastian finished speaking, the detective leaned back in the leather chair and put his hands together on his desk. I understand your concern, and I'm going to be honest with you. In my 30-year career, I've seen everything. I've investigated unfaithful husbands, corrupt partners, thieving employees. But what you're asking for is different. You're not looking for revenge. You're looking for protection for someone you love. Sebastian opened his mouth to deny it, but Don Ricardo raised a hand. Don't deny it to me. You can see it in your face when you talk about her. And don't worry, I'm not judging you. In fact, I think it's noble what you want to do. Many people only investigate when it's too late. The detective opened a new folder and wrote Andrés' full name on the first page. I am going to need all the data you have on this guy. Full name, approximate age, where he works, where he lives, if you know, plates from his truck. The more information I have, the faster I'll be able to work. Sebastian took out his phone and showed him a picture he had taken discreetly the week before when Andrés was in the garden with Marisol. He had felt like a pathetic spy doing it, but now he appreciated having at least that. His name is Andrés Morales. He is 35 years old. He works at the municipal registry office. He drives a gray Nissan truck, but I couldn't see the full plates. Don Ricardo studied the picture with a critical eye. It's enough to start. Do you have any idea where he lives? Sebastian shook his head. I've never asked. Marisol mentioned once that he lives in the direction of the Guadalupe neighborhood, but I don't know exactly where. The detective closed the folder and looked directly at Sebastian with a seriousness he hadn't shown before. Very well. I am going to take the case, but I need you to understand a few things. First, my job is to find the truth, whatever it may be. If this Andrés turns out to be a good guy who genuinely loves Marisol, my report will say that. Are you prepared for that possibility? Sebastian nodded, although the idea made his stomach turn. If he truly loves her, I will step aside. I just want to be sure, Don Ricardo continued. Second, this type of investigation takes time. I cannot give you answers in 2 days. I need to follow him, talk to people who know him, review his history. I calculate that in 3 or 4 weeks, I will have something concrete. 3 or 4 weeks sounded like an eternity to Sebastian, but he understood that things didn't work like in the movies. That's fine. Whatever time is necessary. The detective took out a printed contract and slid it across the desk. Third, my fees are 5,000 pesos per week, plus expenses. If the investigation extends more than a month, we review the agreement. And fourth, the most important thing, you cannot tell anyone that you hired me. Not Marisol, not this Andrés, not your employees. The success of my work depends on the element of surprise. Sebastián signed the contract without hesitation and took out his checkbook. He paid the first 2 weeks in advance, feeling a strange mix of relief and guilt. When can you start? Don Ricardo put the check in a locked drawer. Tomorrow. I'm going to start at his workplace, see how he behaves, who he talks to, what he does in his free time. Believe me, Don Sebastián, if there is something shady here, I'm going to find it. Sebastián left the detective's office with the feeling of having crossed a point of no return. The midday sun beat down hard on the cobblestone streets of San Miguel, but he barely noticed it. He walked aimlessly for an hour, wondering if he had done the right thing. On one hand, he felt like a paranoid controller, someone who couldn't stand to see the woman he loved happy with another man. On the other hand, the promise to Doña Esperanza constantly resonated in his head. Protect her from men who only want to take advantage of her. If Andrés turned out to be trustworthy, perfect. Sebastián would fulfill his promise by letting her go and living with a broken heart the rest of his life. But if there was something dark, if that man was playing with Marisol, then he deserved to be discovered before it was too late. He stopped in front of the parish of San Miguel Arcángel, that pink church that dominated the historic center with its neo-Gothic towers. Without thinking much, he entered the cool and silent temple. He wasn't particularly religious, but at that moment, he needed something bigger than himself, some sign that he was doing the right thing. He sat on a back bench and looked toward the golden altar. God, if you are there listening, help me do the right thing. I don't want to hurt Marisol. I just want to protect her. And if I am not the man for her, give me the strength to accept it. He remained there for 20 minutes in complete silence, letting the peace of the place calm his anxiety. When he left, he felt a little more centered, a little less guilty. He had made a decision, and now he had to live with the consequences, whatever they were. The following days were a torture of waiting. Don Ricardo called him every 3 days to give brief reports. I followed him to work, normal behavior. He talks a lot with a coworker from the registry office, but it seems only friendship. He lives in a modest apartment in the Guadalupe colony, monthly rent of 2,500 pesos. He handles the same routine: work, visit Marisol, return to his house, to nothing extraordinary, nothing suspicious. Sebastián didn't know whether to feel relieved or frustrated. Meanwhile, the relationship between Marisol and Andrés seemed to advance faster and faster. One afternoon, Marisol entered Sebastián's office with a shy smile that he hadn't seen on her in years. Don Sebastián, can I speak with you for a moment? He left the papers he was reviewing, trying to seem casual, although his heart was already galloping. Of course, Marisol. Sit down, please. She sat on the edge of the chair, nervous, playing with her hands. I wanted to tell you that Andrés and I are dating formally. He has been coming to pick me up for almost 2 months and, well, he is a good man. He treats me well. He makes me laugh. I know it's soon, but I feel like I can trust him. Each word was a knife straight to Sebastian's heart, but he kept the forced smile. I am very happy for you, Marisol. You deserve to be happy. She looked at him with those honey-colored eyes that he loved so much. Thank you, Don Sebastian. Your opinion is important to me. You have been like family since my mom died. Like family. The words that Sebastian never wanted to hear. I will always be here for you. You know that? When she left the office, Sebastian buried his face in his hands. Time was running out, and Don Ricardo still hadn't found anything, but something inside him screamed that this man was hiding dark secrets. 3 months had passed since Andrés reappeared in Marisol's life. 3 months that for Sebastian felt like whole years of silent agony. Don Ricardo kept sending weekly reports that revealed nothing concrete. Andrés worked at the registry office normally. He didn't seem to have significant debts. He visited his mother on Sundays. There were no signs of other women. Everything pointed to him simply being a common man trying to build a relationship. Sebastian was beginning to accept the possibility that his suspicions were a product of jealousy disguised as intuition. Maybe Andrés really loved Marisol. Maybe he was the only villain in the story. The man unable to confess his feelings, who was now sabotaging someone else's happiness. Guilt ate him up inside every time he saw Marisol smile upon receiving messages from Andrés on her phone. She seemed happy, more relaxed than ever, as if she had finally found something that made her feel complete. And Sebastian, trapped in his own trap of silence, could only observe from the distance, while the woman he loved moved away a little more each day. Don Ricardo had called him 2 days ago, saying that he needed more time, that something didn't add up in Andrés' movements, but that he still couldn't pinpoint what it was. It's as if he were waiting for something, Don Sebastian. There's an urgency in his behavior that is not normal for someone who is building a quiet relationship. But the detective's words came too late. That December afternoon, when the streets of San Miguel de Allende were already decorated with Christmas lights and star-shaped piñatas, Marisol arrived at the mansion with news that would change everything forever. Sebastian was in the library, reviewing the family business ledgers, when he heard Marisol's hurried steps going up the stairs. She knocked on the door with more force than usual, almost with desperation. Don Sebastian, can I come in? I need to talk to you. He felt his stomach turn upon hearing the urgency in her voice. Come in, Marisol. Did something happen? Are you okay? She entered with her face illuminated by a strange mixture of happiness and confusion, like someone who has just received unexpected news and doesn't know yet how to process it. Andrés asked me to marry him last night. He took me to the San Miguel viewpoint, the one where you can see the whole illuminated city, and he knelt down with a ring that belonged to his grandmother. The words hit Sebastian like hammer blows straight to the chest. 3 months. Only 3 months, and he was already proposing marriage. Something was definitely not right. But when he looked into Marisol's eyes, looking for confirmation of what she felt, what he saw disconcerted him. She didn't look like a woman in love who has just received the proposal of her dreams. She looked scared, insecure, almost regretful. And what did you answer? Sebastian asked, with a trembling voice that he tried to control without success. Marisol sat in the chair in front of the desk, wringing her hands nervously. I told him yes, but Don Sebastian, I need to be honest with someone because I feel so confused that I can't even sleep. Sebastián closed the ledger, giving her all his attention, although every second of that conversation was torture. Speak with confidence, Marisol. You know you can tell me anything. Marisol took a deep breath as if preparing to confess something she had kept inside too long. I don't love Andrés. Not yet. I know it's terrible to say it now that I agreed to marry him, but it's the truth. He is good to me. He treats me well. He makes me laugh. But when I think about spending the rest of my life by his side, I don't feel that emotion that I should feel. I don't feel butterflies in my stomach. I don't feel like my heart is going to burst with happiness. Her eyes filled with tears that she tried to hold back with all her might. Then why did you say yes? Sebastián asked, although part of him didn't want to hear the answer. Marisol looked directly at him. And in that look, there were years of accumulated pain, of frustrated hopes, of unrequited love. Because he had the courage to ask me. Because he chose me. Me being just a domestic employee with nothing to offer. Because I've spent years waiting for someone to tell me they love me, that they want me in their life. And Andrés was the only one who did it. Each word was a poisoned arrow directed at Sebastián's heart, although she didn't know it. I am 29 years old, Don Sebastián. All my childhood friends are already married. They have children. I only have this job and memories of my mom. Andrés offered me an opportunity to have a family, to not be alone. Maybe love will come later, right? That's what they say, that love is built with time. Sebastián wanted to scream. He wanted to shake her and tell her that someone did love her, that someone was him, that he had spent 5 years dying inside every time she passed near. But the words remained stuck in his throat, paralyzed by fear and cowardice. Marisol, marrying without love is a recipe for suffering. You cannot say yes just because someone had courage. You have to say yes because you love that person with all your soul. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, trying to regain her composure. And what happens if no one else loves me like that? What happens if Andrés is my only chance, and I let it go waiting for a perfect love that maybe never arrives? Her voice broke at the end of the question. My mom always told me that perfect love doesn't exist, that the important thing is to find someone with a good heart who treats you well. Andrés meets that. Maybe I am asking too much by wanting to feel things that only exist in soap operas. Sebastián felt the floor opening under his feet. This was his chance. The moment he had waited for and feared for 5 years. He just had to say 3 words. I love you. 3 words that would change everything, that would give Marisol the option to really choose. But when he opened his mouth to speak, what came out was pure cowardice. If you feel that Andrés is a good man and that you can build something with him, then lean on that. But don't get married out of obligation or for fear of being alone. You deserve more than that. Marisol nodded slowly, disappointed by an answer she hoped would be different, although she didn't know exactly how. You're right. I'm going to try to make it work. Andrés says he wants us to get married soon, in 2 months maximum. He says that when one is sure of something, there's no reason to wait. 2 months. Time was accelerating brutally, Sebastián calculated mentally. Don Ricardo needed more time to finish the investigation. Isn't 2 months very soon? You've barely known each other for 3 months. Marisol shrugged with resignation. He says we've known each other since we were children, that we're just picking up something that already existed. And he's right, I suppose. We are not strangers. Sebastián watched her get up from the chair and walk toward the door with slow steps, as if her own feet doubted the decision her head had made. Before she left, he called her one last time. Marisol, wait. She turned around with hopeful eyes, as if, deep down, she wished he would say something that would save her from that commitment. I just want you to know that your mom would be proud of you, no matter what you decide. And I will also be here for you, always. If at any moment you feel that this is not what you want, you don't have to go forward just because you already said yes. Brave people also know when to take a step back. Marisol smiled sadly. Thank you, Don Sebastián. You have always been as good to me as the older brother I never had. Brother. Again that word that destroyed him. When she finally left and closed the door, Sebastián fell into his chair and covered his face with his hands. He had failed. He had had the perfect opportunity to confess his feelings and had let it pass out of cowardice. Now Marisol was going to marry a man she didn't love in 2 months, and he had done nothing to prevent it. He took his phone with trembling hands and called Don Ricardo. I need urgent results. I no longer have 3 weeks. I barely have 2 months before she marries him. On the other side of the line, the detective sighed. I'm close to something, Don Sebastián. Very close. Give me 1 more week, and I will have concrete answers. But I need you to trust me. Sebastián hung up and stared at the library ceiling. 1 week could be all the difference between saving Marisol or losing her forever. And he could only wait while the clock ran relentlessly toward a wedding that shouldn't happen. 2 months passed like a painful sigh, like sand falling through fingers without being able to stop it. Don Ricardo finally found something suspicious in the 3rd week. Andrés had been investigating issues of inheritance and marital assets on the internet, searching for information on marriage and property rights obsessively. But it wasn't enough to prove anything concrete. He could just be a nervous man learning about the legal implications of marriage, the detective had said with frustration. I need more time to connect the pieces, but everything points to there being a hidden economic interest. The problem is that I can't find what it is. Marisol has no properties. She has no important bank accounts. She didn't inherit anything. What would this guy be looking for? Sebastián didn't have answers either, only a growing anguish that ate him up inside every day that passed. Meanwhile, the wedding preparations advanced with disturbing speed. Marisol had chosen a small church in the center of San Miguel de Allende. Nothing ostentatious, just a simple ceremony with 30 guests. Andrés insisted it be soon, arguing that it made no sense to spend months on preparations when both already knew what they wanted. Sebastián observed from afar how Marisol let herself be carried by the current, like a rudderless ship sailing toward an uncertain destination. She'd stopped smiling with the same frequency. Her eyes had lost that shine he loved so much. In recent weeks, they barely spoke, and when they did, the conversation was superficial, painful. Sebastián knew she was suffering, but he also didn't know how to help her without confessing the whole truth. That he loved her, that he had hired a detective, that he suspected Andrés. Everything seemed too late, too complicated, too broken to be fixed. The night before the wedding, Sebastián couldn't sleep. He sat on the terrace of the mansion, looking at the stars over San Miguel de Allende. wondering how he had reached this point of despair. Don Ricardo had called him that afternoon with disturbing news. He had discovered that Andrés frequently visited the inheritance registry office in the building, reviewing files that did not correspond to his work area. He is looking for something specific, Don Sebastián. I still don't know what, but his behavior is not normal. A common employee does not have access to those files without an official reason. Sebastián had asked him to keep investigating, but the detective was honest. Tomorrow is the wedding. Even if I find something tonight, there will no longer be time to do anything. The helplessness was like poison running through Sebastián's veins. He had promised to take care of Marisol and was failing miserably. He thought about showing up at her house that same night, knocking on her door, telling her everything. But with what proof? With suspicions and hunches? Marisol would think he was crazy, that his jealousy had made him paranoid. Or worse still, she would think he was trying to sabotage her happiness out of selfishness. The truth was too fragile, too circumstantial. He had nothing solid to show her, only the testimony of a detective who also hadn't found concrete evidence of anything illegal. Sebastián took a long swig of mezcal directly from the bottle, feeling how it burned his throat. Tomorrow, Marisol would dress in white, walk toward the altar, and say, "I do," to a man who was possibly using her. And he would be sitting there, in silence, watching his biggest failure be consummated. On the other side of the city, in her small house in the neighborhood where she grew up, Marisol couldn't sleep either. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, looking at the wedding dress hanging from the closet door. It was a simple dress of white lace, which she had bought in a second-hand store, and which Doña Guadalupe had fixed with love so it would fit her perfectly. She should feel excited, nervous, happy. But the only thing she felt was a huge void in her chest, as if something fundamental was missing in this whole story. Her two older brothers, who lived in Querétaro, had arrived that afternoon for the wedding. They had hugged her, told her she looked beautiful, that Andrés seemed like a good man. But she noticed the doubt in their eyes, the questions they didn't dare ask. Her younger sister, Clara, had been more direct. "Do you really love him, Marisol? Because I don't see you as a bride in love. You look like someone who is going to make a sacrifice." Marisol had tried to deny it. She had said it was just normal nerves, but Clara knew her too well. "You're still thinking about Don Sebastián, aren't you? Mom told me before she died that you always looked at him differently, that there was something there." Marisol had cried then, confessing to her sister what she had never told anyone, that yes, she had loved Sebastián for years, but that he never saw her as anything more than his employee's daughter. "He had 5 years to say something to me, Clara. 5 years, and he never did. Andrés, at least, was brave. He chose me. He asked me to marry him. He offered me a future. I can't keep waiting for someone who is never going to take the first step." Clara had hugged her sister while she cried, not knowing what to say to comfort her. The truth was that Marisol was right. Sebastián had had infinite opportunities and never took advantage of them. Maybe he simply didn't feel the same. Maybe she had misinterpreted his kindness as something deeper. If tomorrow, before you say, "I do," you realize that this is wrong, swear to me that you are going to run out of that church. Swear it to me, Marisol. Mom wouldn't want to see you unhappy in a loveless marriage. Marisol had nodded, but both knew it was just an empty promise. She didn't have the courage to do something like that, to leave Andrés standing in front of all the guests, to face public shame. Besides, what other option did she have? Return to the mansion, keep working, see Sebastián every day, knowing that he would never love her the way she needed? At least with Andrés, she would have a chance to build something new, to leave behind that impossible love that only caused her pain. She lay on her bed looking at the ceiling, counting the hours remaining until the moment that would change her life forever. She tried to imagine herself happy next to Andrés. She tried to convince herself that she was making the right decision. But every time she closed her eyes, the only thing she saw was Sebastián's face, his sad smile, his eyes that seemed to hide 1,000 unspoken words. "Forgive me, Mom," she whispered to the air. "I am going to try to be happy even if my heart is somewhere else. I am going to keep my word. Tomorrow I marry Andrés and let go forever of what could never be." A tear rolled down her cheek until it was lost in the pillow. The clock struck 3 in the morning, and in a few hours her life would take a path from which there might be no return. The morning of the wedding arrived with a clear sky and a bright sun that seemed to mock the emotional storm the protagonists of this story were living. Sebastián dressed in a dark suit, combed his hair in front of the mirror without really seeing himself, and drove to the church like an automaton. Don Ricardo had called him at 6 in the morning with urgency in his voice. "Don Sebastián, I found something. I finally connected all the pieces, but I need confirmation of one last detail before I can tell you with certainty what is happening. Give me until noon." The wedding was at 11 in the morning. Noon would be too late. "Do what you can, Don Ricardo. If you discover something, call me immediately, no matter where I am." Sebastián arrived at the church an hour before the ceremony. The place was already decorated with simple floral arrangements, white roses and ivory ribbons. There were barely 30 chairs placed, half for Marisol's family, the other half for Andrés's friends and some colleagues from the registry office. Sebastián sat in the last row on the bride's side, trying to go unnoticed, although his presence was impossible to ignore. Doña Guadalupe arrived shortly after, sat next to him, and squeezed his hand without saying anything. Both knew that something terrible was about to happen, but neither knew exactly what. The guests arrived little by little. Andrés appeared 15 minutes before 11, dressed in an impeccable gray suit, greeting everyone with that perfect smile that Sebastián found increasingly false. The groom looked calm, confident, like someone about to win a major bet. And perhaps, thought Sebastián bitterly, that was exactly how he felt. At 11 o'clock sharp, the church doors opened and Marisol appeared on the arm of her older brother, who would give her away in place of the father she never knew. Sebastián felt all the air leave his lungs upon seeing her. She was beautiful in her simple lace dress, her hair gathered in a soft bun, with small white flowers interwoven. But her face did not reflect the joy a bride should have. Her eyes were swollen, as if she'd cried all night, and she walked with mechanical steps, like someone advancing toward her own execution. When she passed by the row where Sebastián was, their gazes met for an eternal second. And in that second he saw everything: the pain, the resignation, the silent plea for someone to save her from this. Sebastián clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Don Ricardo still hadn't called. Time was running out. Marisol reached the altar and stood next to Andrés, who took her hand with possession rather than love. Father Ignacio, an elderly priest who had known Marisol's family for decades, began the ceremony with a grave voice. Brothers and sisters, we have gathered here to witness the matrimonial union of Andrés and Marisol. The words sounded distant, as if coming from another world. Sebastián looked at his phone every 30 seconds, praying to God that Don Ricardo would find whatever he was looking for. The ceremony advanced inexorably. Father Ignacio spoke about commitment, about true love, about the importance of building a marriage on solid foundations of respect and honesty. The words were beautiful, but everything in that church felt terribly wrong, like a play where all the actors knew the ending shouldn't be this way. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video. May the light of God illuminate your path and fill you with blessings every day of your life. Father Ignacio continued with the ceremony, his words echoing off the ancient walls of the small church. That marriage is a sacred sacrament, a promise made before God and this community. Sebastián felt every word as a personal reproach. He looked at Marisol standing in front of the altar, her back tense, her shoulders slumped. Andrés looked completely relaxed, like someone closing a successful business deal. Father Ignacio raised his hands. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined, let them speak now or forever. Hold their peace. The silence was crushing. Sebastián felt Doña Guadalupe's gaze pushing him to stand up. No one spoke. The moment passed. Andrés, do you accept Marisol as your wife to love and respect her until death do you part? Andrés squeezed Marisol's hand. I do, he responded with a sure voice. Sebastián's phone vibrated in his pocket. Sebastián's heart gave a violent lurch. He took out the phone with trembling hands. On the screen shone Don Ricardo. Without thinking, he stood up, causing noise. Several guests turned to look at him. Father Ignacio stopped, visibly annoyed. Excuse me, murmured Sebastián, leaving quickly. Doña Guadalupe followed him with her gaze. Marisol also turned, confusion on her face. Outside, under the bright sun, Sebastián answered with urgency. Tell me, Don Ricardo, what did you find? The detective's voice sounded breathless. I found the complete file. Andrés discovered 6 months ago that Marisol inherits millions from her father in Spain. Rafael Sandoval died, leaving her a considerable fortune. Andrés intercepted the official documents before they reached her. I have all the proof. That man does not love her. He only wants her money. Sebastián felt fury replace fear. All the time he had been right about Andrés. That bastard, he muttered between clenched teeth. What do I do? The ceremony already started. The detective responded without hesitation. Go in there and tell her the truth right now, before it is too late. No matter the scandal, that girl deserves to know who she is marrying. Sebastián didn't need more motivation. He hung up the phone and ran toward the church, but stopped upon hearing Father Ignacio's voice. Marisol, do you accept Andrés as your husband, to love him and respect him until death do you part? There was a long pause. Sebastián held his breath until his lungs burned. I, began Marisol with a trembling voice. Sebastián didn't wait any longer. He pushed the doors with brutal force that made them slam against the walls. Everyone screamed in surprise. Sebastián walked down the aisle with firm steps. His gaze was fixed on Marisol. She watched him with huge eyes full of confusion. Father Ignacio dropped the missile. "Sebastián, what are you doing? This is a sacrament." Sebastián didn't stop for a second. He reached the altar, ignoring Andrés completely. He extended his hand toward Marisol in a protective gesture. "You cannot marry him. You need to know the truth about who this man really is." Marisol looked at his hand without understanding what was happening. "What are you talking about, Don Sebastián?" she asked with a broken voice. Andrés released her hand abruptly and turned furious. "This is ridiculous. You are interrupting out of jealousy. Everyone knows that you have always wanted her." The accusation fell like a bomb among the guests. Murmurs erupted immediately. Marisol opened her eyes, looking for a denial that didn't come. Sebastián maintained calm with superhuman effort. His voice was firm and clear. "You are right. I love Marisol. I have loved her for 5 years in complete silence, but not out of selfish jealousy. Precisely because I truly love her, I cannot see her marry a liar who only wants her inheritance." The word inheritance caused new confusion. Marisol frowned deeply. "What inheritance? I don't have any inheritance." Sebastián showed his phone with the photographs. "Your biological father died 6 months ago in Spain. He left you a millionaire fortune. Andrés discovered it at the registry office and approached you for the money. Everything was calculated from the first day. Every word, every gesture, every promise." Marisol took the phone, trembling. She looked at the documents, the dates, the official names. The pieces fit together like a cruel puzzle. The sudden reappearance, the hurry to get married. Everything made horrible sense now. Outside the church, the midday sun beat down on the stones of the atrium. Marisol walked as if in a trance. Her dress dragged on the cobblestone floor, gathering dust. The guests came out in a drove. Everyone spoke at the same time, asking what had happened. Doña Guadalupe was the first to reach them. She hugged Marisol with maternal strength. "Oh, my little daughter. Thank God that Don Sebastián arrived in time." Marisol didn't respond. She just stared into the void with lost eyes. Marisol's brothers appeared seconds later. "What the hell is happening here?" asked Raphael. "Who are you to interrupt like this?" Sebastián took a deep breath, preparing to explain. "I am her employer. I interrupted because Andrés was deceiving her. He only wanted to marry for an inheritance she didn't know she had." Clara put her hands to her mouth. "What inheritance? What are you talking about?" Before Sebastián could continue, Andrés came out of the church. His face was completely red with anger and shame. Father Ignacio tried to stop him, but he broke free. He walked straight to where everyone was gathered. The guests formed a circle around them. "Marisol, please let me explain," began Andrés with desperation. "It is not how he is presenting it." Marisol finally reacted upon hearing his voice. She broke free from Doña Guadalupe and turned. Her face showed a fury no one expected. "It is not how he presents it. Are you going to justify this?" Her voice trembled, but it was firm. "Tell me the truth, Andrés. Did you know about the inheritance when you approached me?" Yes or no? Andrés looked around, aware that everyone was watching him. He tried to take Marisol's hand. She pulled it back abruptly, as if it burned. Answer me now, she demanded with a louder voice. The silence stretched for eternal seconds. Andrés finally gave in under the weight of the stares. His shoulders slumped in total defeat. Yes, he admitted in a low but audible voice. Yes, I knew from the beginning. I saw the file in the registry office 6 months ago. Your father died, leaving you a millionaire inheritance. I intercepted the document before it reached you. Murmurs of indignation erupted among those present. Marisol staggered as if the words were physical blows. And you decided to use it to manipulate me emotionally? Everything was a lie from the first day? Andrés raised his hands defensively. At the beginning, yes, but afterwards, I truly cared for you. Clara intervened with a hard voice. Why such a hurry to marry? Did you want to be married before she found out? Andrés lost the little composure he had left. Yes, I wanted to make sure, but you don't understand what it is to grow up in poverty. Seeing your mother work 14 hours just to eat. When I saw the opportunity, I thought about having a better life and making Marisol happy. Raphael took a threatening step. It is terrible when you do it by lying. You are an opportunist. Sebastián intervened, interposing himself between them. Andrés, it is best that you go. You already caused enough damage. Andrés turned toward Marisol. During these months, didn't you feel anything real between us? I admit I started for money, but I fell in love with you. Give me a chance to prove it. Marisol observed him for a long time. Tears stained her makeup, carefully applied that morning. Do you know what is the saddest thing? Asked Marisol with a broken voice. That I was willing to love you. I didn't love you yet, but I was going to try. I thought you were honest, brave, good. But you are a liar who played with my feelings for money. She took off the ring and threw it at his feet. I don't want to see you ever again. Don't call me. Don't look for me. For me, you ceased to exist. Andrés picked up the ring, trembling. He looked around, seeing rejection on every face. I'm sorry, he finally murmured. I really am sorry, Marisol. She didn't respond. She simply turned her back on him. Andrés remained there a few seconds before walking away toward his truck. The engine faded into the distance. Marisol collapsed. Sebastián caught her, holding her, while she cried uncontrollably. He lied to me for 3 full months, she sobbed. How was I so foolish? Sebastián stroked her hair, while his own heart broke seeing her pain, knowing that, although they had avoided a disaster, the wounds would take a long time to heal completely. The night after the canceled wedding was the longest of Marisol's life. Doña Guadalupe installed her in her old room in the mansion, the same one where she had slept when her mother worked there. The walls were still painted the same sky blue color her mom had chosen years ago. Marisol took off the wedding dress with slow and mechanical movements, letting it fall to the floor as if it were garbage. She put on an old nightgown she found in the closet and got under the covers, shivering despite the heat. Clara stayed with her all night, hugging her while she cried uncontrollably, saying nothing because there were no words that could alleviate that kind of pain. Sebastián didn't sleep at all. He stayed awake in his office, looking at the phone, wanting to go up to see her, but not daring to invade her space. Doña Guadalupe came down at 3 a.m. and served him pot coffee in silence. You did the right thing, my son. You saved that girl from ruining her life. Sebastian nodded without conviction, feeling that he had arrived too late to prevent her heart from breaking anyway. At dawn, when the first rays of sun painted the sky, orange over San Miguel de Allende, Marisol finally fell asleep from pure exhaustion. Clara took the opportunity to go down for breakfast. She found Sebastian still in the kitchen, without having changed his clothes. She is going to be fine eventually, said Clara, pouring herself coffee. But she is going to need time to process all this. 3 months of lies aren't forgotten in a day. Sebastian looked at his empty cup. I have part of the blame. If I had told her what I felt years ago, Andrés would never have had the opportunity to approach her. Clara shook her head. Don't torture yourself like that. You saved her life by discovering the truth in time. That counts more than any declaration of love you could have made before. 2 full days passed. Marisol barely left her room. She ate little. She spoke less. Sebastian respected her space, but left fresh flowers at her door every morning. Sunflowers, her mother's favorites. On the morning of the 3rd day, Doña Guadalupe told him that Marisol had finally asked for him. Sebastian went up the stairs with his heart hammering in his chest. He knocked softly on the door. Come in, responded Marisol's weak voice from inside. He entered and found her sitting by the window, looking at the garden where so many times Andrés had courted her with lies. She looked pale, with deep, dark circles under her eyes, but her eyes were no longer empty. There was some life slowly returning to them. Don Sebastian, sit down, please, she said, pointing to the chair in front of her. He obeyed in silence, waiting for her to speak first. I want to thank you for what you did. I know you hired that detective who investigated Andrés for months. Doña Guadalupe told me everything. Sebastian opened his mouth to explain, but she raised a hand. Let me finish. At first I felt invaded, as if you didn't trust me to make my own decisions. But now I understand that you were fulfilling the promise you made to my mom. You were protecting me as she asked you. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. My mom was right to trust you. You saved me from making the worst mistake of my life. Sebastian felt a lump in his throat. Marisol, there is something else I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 5 years ago and was too cowardly. She looked at him expectantly, her breathing accelerating slightly. When Andrés said in the church that I have always loved you, he wasn't wrong. It is true. I love you, Marisol. I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe it was gradual over years, or maybe it was that day I saw you planting sunflowers in the garden 6 months after your mom died. But I love you with everything I am. I love your laughter, your kindness, the way you treat everyone with respect. I love how you light up every room you enter. The words he had kept for 5 years finally flowed freely. I didn't tell you before because I was afraid that you would reject me, that you would think I was abusing my position as your boss, of losing your presence in my life if things went wrong. I was a selfish coward who preferred to suffer in silence rather than to take a risk. Marisol was crying openly now, tears rolling down her cheeks without her doing anything to stop them. When you agreed to marry Andrés and told me that he had had the courage I never had, I felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. Continued Sebastian, his own voice breaking. because you were absolutely right. He was brave and I was a coward. But I swear by your mother's memory that my feelings were always pure, always real. There was never calculation nor interest, only genuine love that I didn't know how to express. He got up from the chair and knelt in front of her, taking a small blue velvet box out of his pocket. Marisol, I know it is too soon. I know you just got out of a terrible situation, and that the last thing you need is pressure from another relationship. But I cannot stay silent 1 minute more, not after almost losing you. He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring with a honey-colored stone that matched her eyes. I am not asking you to marry me now. I am asking you for a chance. Give me the chance to prove to you every day that my love is real, that I don't need your inheritance nor anything material from you. I only need you. Marisol looked at him with eyes full of tears, her heart divided between recent pain and the hope of something she had always dreamed of. Marisol covered her face with both hands while she sobbed, her body trembling with the intensity of the contradictory emotions passing through her. Sebastián remained kneeling, waiting, his heart beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. Seconds passed that seemed like hours. Finally, Marisol lowered her hands and looked at him with a mixture of tenderness and pain that split his soul. Don Sebastián, I love you too, she confessed with a trembling voice. I have loved you for years. Every morning I woke up excited to come to work just to see you. Every time you entered a room, my heart accelerated. But I thought it was impossible that a man like you would ever notice someone like me. Sebastián shook his head vehemently. There was never anyone else. Only you. Marisol smiled through tears. When Andrés appeared, part of me hoped you would say something, that you would do something to stop him. And when you didn't, I thought I had misinterpreted everything, that your kindness was just that. Kindness. That is why I accepted Andrés, because at least he had the courage to choose me openly. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. But now I am broken, Don Sebastián, she continued with a broken voice. 3 months, thinking someone loved me, only to discover that everything was a lie. I feel used, foolish, as if my heart were garbage anyone can step on. I don't know if I can trust my own feelings now. And what if what I feel for you isn't real either? What if I am just confusing gratitude with love because you saved me? Sebastián took her hands gently. That is perfectly valid and understandable. That is why I don't ask you for an answer now. I only ask you for time. Time to heal. Time to be sure of what you feel. I am going to be here waiting as long as you need. A month, a year, 10 years. I am not going anywhere. He stood up and placed the little box with the ring in her hands. Keep this, and when you are ready, when your heart has healed, and you are sure that what you feel is real, you tell me. Meanwhile, I just want you to know that you are truly loved, without conditions, without hidden interests. He kissed her forehead gently and left the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the weight of the ring in her hands. The following months were of slow but constant healing. Marisol processed her father's inheritance in Spain with the help of a lawyer. It turned out to be even bigger than what Andrés had discovered. Properties in Madrid, substantial bank accounts, shares in a textile company. Don Ricardo handed her all the documentation he'd gathered about Andrés's fraud. Marisol filed a formal complaint at the registry office, and Andrés was fired immediately, in addition to facing charges for illegal access to confidential documents. But Marisol didn't feel satisfaction with that, only sadness for what could have been if he had chosen honesty from the beginning. Sebastián kept his promise. He didn't pressure, he didn't insist. He was just present. He accompanied her to the proceedings when she asked him. He comforted her when nightmares about Andrés woke her up crying. He gave her space when she needed it. Little by little, Marisol began to see the difference between Andrés's calculated love and Sebastián's genuine love. One sought to possess her, the other sought to see her flourish. One needed something from her, the other only needed her. The difference was as clear as crystal water. 6 months after the canceled wedding, on a cool June morning, Marisol went down to the mansion garden before dawn. Sebastián was there, like every morning, drinking coffee and watching the sky change color. She sat next to him in silence. "I am ready," she said simply. Sebastián looked at her without completely understanding. "Ready for what?" Marisol took out of her pocket the blue box he had given her months ago. "Ready to tell you yes. Yes, I want that chance. Yes, I want to build something with you. Yes, I am sure that what I feel is real love." Sebastián dropped the coffee cup, which shattered against the floor, but neither of them cared. He hugged her tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you sure? Completely sure?" Marisol nodded against his chest. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You know me for real, Sebastián. You know my flaws, my fears, my dreams, and you love me anyway. That is the kind of love my mom wanted for me." They separated enough to look into each other's eyes. Sebastián slid the ring onto her finger slowly, savoring the moment. "I promise you that every day of my life I am going to work to deserve this yes." 4 months later, on a golden October afternoon, Sebastián and Marisol married in the same small church where the disaster almost happened. But this time, everything was different. Marisol walked toward the altar radiant, with a new dress and a genuine smile that illuminated her face. Her brothers accompanied her, weeping with happiness. Doña Guadalupe was in the first row with a handkerchief soaked in joyful tears. When Father Ignacio asked if anyone had objections, everyone laughed, remembering that chaotic day. This time, no one interrupted. This time, when they said, "I do," the words were full of certainty and true love. Her father's inheritance was an unexpected gift, but Marisol decided to honor her mother's memory with it. She divided the money among all of Doña Esperanza's living siblings, uncles, and aunts who had supported her when she needed it most. Sebastián supported her in every decision, proud of the extraordinary woman he had by his side. Together they built a life based on honesty, respect, and genuine love. And every night before sleeping, Marisol looked at the ceiling and whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for asking him to take care of me. You chose well." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that celebrate true love and honesty. May God bless your life with people who love you sincerely, without masks or interests, only with the pure heart you deserve to receive every day.